to approach a subject that's interesting and possibly controversial to some. What is biblical astronomy?
Well, very simply, Michael, biblical astronomy is what the Bible teaches about astronomy. We have already talked about this briefly a little bit earlier when we mentioned the subject of archaeo-astronomy. Archaeo-astronomy is what ancient cultures knew and understood and believed about astronomy. So we have several ancient cultures in view here where astronomy played a huge role. We've got Babylonian archaeoastronomy, we have Persian archaeoastronomy. We don't talk about it a whole lot, but even Greek and Roman archaeoastronomy does play a role in the story. But the missing piece is that there is such a thing as Judean archaeoastronomy. What did the Judeans know and understand and think about astronomy in ancient Judea? And this field of study, we have seen so much improvement and so much learning in this field of study in the past 40 to 50 years that experts in this field rightfully say, if you do not understand the astronomy of an ancient culture, you're failing to understand that culture.
That makes a lot of sense. We see that in the Mayans and other civilizations, but some people might push back, Tim. They might say, doesn't the Bible forbid the practice of astrology? I know you're saying astronomy.
Right, of course. Well, there is a nuanced distinction, okay? Because there are many things in the Bible where you have the genuine and the counterfeit.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, you can't have a counterfeit if you don't have a genuine. If you don't have a genuine, then a counterfeit becomes devoid of any meaning, because that's the whole point of what a counterfeit is. It is imitation of the genuine. So just to pick an example, you have both genuine and counterfeit prophecy in the Bible. Prophecy isn't forbidden, it's encouraged. False prophecy is what you have to watch out for. So we have a very similar paradigm in that celestial observation is right there in the Bible. We are told to do it. In my opinion, you really can't argue about that, but we are definitely told you want the genuine, not the counterfeit.
Okay, let's do a little compare and contrast. Give me some examples of where you say that the Bible instructs us to do these celestial observations.
Absolutely. Well, let's start right at the beginning, shall we? Genesis chapter 1. This is right in the beginning. It's the very first chapter of Genesis. God is creating the heavens and the earth. And in verse 14, we read, "Then God said, 'Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years.'" Now, those four words in Hebrew have much deeper meaning than they appear to do at face value. So that's part of where our understanding comes from, is that they're not just a clock or a calendar, although that's a significant role that they play. What we discover is that the stars actually tell a story.
Okay, in Genesis we have this creation of the universe, and I need you to take it further than that. I need more examples.
Absolutely. So let's try Psalms, right? Let's go to the book of Psalms, and this will be in Psalm 19, one of my favorites, not simply because of this, but I just love the whole psalm. But right at the beginning, Psalm 19, verse 1, we read, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day they utter speech, and night unto night they show knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard."
That speaks louder to me.
Yes, it does. Because there it is. The stars, the sun, the moon, and the stars, they tell a story. They speak. That's what the Bible says. They speak. They tell a story. And we can read some of that story.
Okay. Well, now let's contrast that, just so we all understand here what's going on and what you're saying. Give me some where it defines or instructs the prohibition of this.
Before I get there, I want to give you one more quick example of the for, before we get to the against, and that is in Luke chapter 21. I'm just going to summarize it. It's an end times verse. Jesus' disciples have come to him and they've asked him, "Master, what are the signs of your coming and the end of the age?" And one of the things he tells them is he says, there will be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. So there's Jesus himself telling his disciples to look for signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars.
I still want to be clear. I want to make sure I understand you, Tim. Give me some verses that clearly instruct us the prohibition of this.
Well, one of the better examples is in Deuteronomy chapter 4, and I'll read that in 1 second. The quick background is that the children of Israel are getting ready to enter into the promised land, and Moses is giving them instructions, right? So in the middle of that, we read, it says, and take heed lest you lift your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the host of heaven, you feel driven to worship them and serve them.
Okay, I get it. That does sound more like idolatry or worshiping of the stars as opposed to celestial observations, which I believe you're talking about.
Correct, and that is the distinction. It may seem nuanced to some, and frankly, it is nuanced to a certain degree, but that is a standard distinction that we find throughout the Bible in many areas. There's a genuine and there's a counterfeit. What is forbidden is the counterfeit.
Understood. Tim, there is this star in the nativity story.
Of course there is.
But besides that, where else do we see celestial observation in the story?
Well, celestial observation plays two major roles in the story as I'm trying to retell it. Number one, it's in what the Magi saw. The Magi arrived at the court of Herod the Great, and they said, we have seen his star in the east. So that's part one. Part two is that we can actually use celestial observation to pinpoint the day and time that Jesus was born.
The day and time that Jesus was born. We can do that. All right, so tell me then, first of all, what did the Magi see exactly?
Okay, so unfortunately, we don't have the time to go into detail about everything that they saw, so I'll just have to summarize.
Okay.
But I believe that what the Magi saw was actually a series of events that involved the planet Jupiter in the constellation of Leo, punctuated by conjunctions with other planets and a unique type of planetary motion called retrograde motion. So they saw a series of events over about 1 year of time, Jupiter in Leo, plus these conjunctions, plus this retrograde motion, and I believe that that all combined to tell them that the Jewish Messiah has been born in Judea, and that that's what inspired them to travel to Judea, to Jerusalem, and then eventually to Bethlehem to see the young child Jesus.
You said plural events.
Correct.
Over a year. Okay, I just wanted to reemphasize that because I think that's important. Explain a little better the second way that we are going to use celestial observation now.
Well, we need to hang on to the first one here for a minute
Okay, fair enough.
Explore that a little more in detail, because when the Magi arrived at the court of Herod the Great, they said, we have seen his star in the east. That's a really unique phrase, his star. They were identifying a sign or a series of signs as his star, meaning the star that represents the Messiah. So I believe that that was actually a singular event that kind of kicked it off,
Sure.
that really got their attention. And I believe that that singular event that got their attention was a conjunction of the planets Jupiter and Venus in the constellation of Leo near the star Regulus on August 12th, 3 BC. I believe that's the first one they saw that kicked it off, and they started really paying attention once they saw that.
August 12th, 3 BC. All right, well, that fits with the rest of the story so far. Take it further.
Okay, so let's explain what that means according to Judean archaeo-astronomy. because in Judean archaeoastronomy, each of those signs and symbols mean something. So for example, all the way back in the Old Testament, remember Joseph? He had a dream. And in that dream it says he saw the sun, the moon, and the 11 constellations bowing down to him. And when he tells it to his father Jacob, Jacob understood the meaning. He didn't have to have it explained to him. So this means that Joseph and Jacob and his 11 brothers, they knew and understood that the 12 major constellations each represent one of the 12 tribes of Judah.
I'm following you.
Okay, or of Israel, I should say. So Leo, Jesus is called the Lion of the tribe of Judah. So Judah is the royal tribe. That's where all their royalty comes from. So Leo is the Lion of Judah. So there you have it, the royal tribe. And this is all taking place in Leo, right? Well, then you have the planet Jupiter. Planet Jupiter is known throughout ancient times in every ancient culture as the king planet.
Yes.
And its name in Hebrew is Tzedek, which means righteousness, the king of righteousness. So then in addition, you have the planet Venus. So Venus is the bright and morning star. So Jupiter refers to Jesus' kingship. Venus refers to his messiahship, okay, which in Hebrew, that's what I mentioned in a previous episode, is he would be called the Mashiach Nagid, the Messiah, the King. And this is all happening in Leo, and it's happening very close to a star called Regulus, which is known as the King's Star.
This is speaking pretty clear.
Yeah, it really is, because Regulus gets its name from the Hebrew word regel, which is where we get the word regal. That's where we get it from. Interestingly enough, it actually means feet. But in Hebrew understanding, the king rules wherever he puts his feet. The heavens are God's throne, and the earth is his footstool. So wherever God puts his feet, that is where he reigns. So in the symbolism, just a quick recap, you've got the king planet, the bright and morning star in the royal house near the king's star. So that is a profound explanation that it has something to do with Jesus Christ, the Messiah of Israel.
The Magi saw all of that and could only read it one way.
Right, you could only read it one way. And try to do this very quickly, that one of those stars is Venus, right? And I believe that on this occasion, Venus was in its heliacal rising.
Mm-hmm.
So a heliacal rising is when a star pops up above the horizon just before the sun comes up. And that means within the next 15, 20, 30 minutes, the sun is going to come up and it's so bright you can't see that star anymore. But when it pops up on the horizon, that's a really big deal. And before we talked about the Venus tablet of Amazaduka, that is a record of the heliacal risings of the planet Venus. So this was the heliacal rising of Venus in that year, and therefore it would have been in that record, and this is part of what drew their attention to it, including the symbolism which told them that the Hebrew Messiah had been born in Judea.
Tim, you said that the second way that we could use celestial observation in our story is that we could be modern Magi. Expand on that.
This is great, because what we can do is we can use celestial observation to determine exactly when Jesus was born. This is what I mentioned earlier in the show, that the birth date of Jesus Christ is knowable. It's just not knowable in a way that people expect to find, because it's written in the stars. And we're told what to look for in the Bible.
Tim, you said we can get the exact time Jesus was born down to the day and hour, but it's written in a cryptic way.
Correct.
What is that sign?
Very simple. In Revelation chapter 12, in verse 1, it tells us what the sign is. it says, John is seeing this in the Spirit, and he says, "And I saw a great sign and wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon underneath her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars." That's the sign.
All right. So what would that look like and how would we interpret it?
Yeah, of course. I was playing with you there because
Okay.
what does that look like, right?
Right.
That's the question we have to ask. So we're going to be able to put this up on
It's clearly a constellation.
Right. So it's clearly a constellation, and we're going to put this up on the screen, but let's try to describe it.
Okay.
Is there a woman in the zodiac?
There is one.
Yeah.
Virgo?
Virgo. And what do we think the word Virgo means?
It might mean virgin.
Yeah, it means virgin. Is there a virgin in the nativity story?
There is one.
Just there is one, right?
Yeah.
Of course. So the constellation Virgo means virgin. And I want you to imagine that she's actually upside down. Imagine the picture of a woman in your mind, but that she's upside down at an angle, right?
Okay.
And I know we're playing games here trying to imagine this, and like I said, we're going to put it on the screen. Her head is actually below the horizon to the right, and then her feet are above the horizon to the left. So she's kind of at an angle.
I understand.
Like this, okay? The setting sun is right in the middle of her body, and the setting moon is underneath her feet. So that is a woman clothed with the sun and the moon underneath her feet. Now, the part that you can't see at this time that you would have had to have seen in the morning, because this is taking place at sunset. The setting sun is in the middle of her body. But earlier that morning, you could have seen the constellation Leo, which is above her head. Now, in this instance, it's below the horizon because she's upside down, right? So the constellation Leo is above her head. Leo has 9 stars, but there are 3 planets in Leo that makes a total of 12 stars. And remember, Leo is the royal tribe. So that is the crown of 12 stars. Behold, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon underneath her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars.
I understand. And this was all visible.
Yeah, it was all visible at one time of the day or another. You couldn't see it all at one time because part of it would be below the horizon. But if you knew what to look for, you could have seen that earlier in the day, and you could put the picture together in your head. Plus, for us today, we have computers.
All right. So I'm sure you have the software and have already figured this out.
Of course.
Tell me what the day was.
Okay, well, what does it all mean, right? Let's put it all together.
Okay.
So think about this for a second. This is on the western horizon. The sun is setting, right? The moon is setting. So within not very long, so you got to be able to see it, right? So as the sun goes below the horizon, now you can see the stars and you can see the moon, right? Mm-hmm. But pretty soon, the sun's going to go below the horizon and the moon is going to go below the horizon and the sign's gone, right? So the key is that you've got a specific window of time between when the sun sets and when the moon sets. In addition, this basic sign, the woman clothed with the sun, that actually occurs every year. It's the crown of 12 stars that makes it interesting because it's the two of them combined that makes the sign for when Jesus was born. Because the verses following in the book of Revelation say, "And she, the woman, travailed in pain, ready to give birth." But to cut right to the chase and get this all figured out, the sun is going to set, the moon is going to set. That's about a 90-minute period of time.
Okay.
So all we have to do is take those parameters, plug it into computer astronomy software, and look for that sign on the western horizon visible from Judea. And when do we see that? That's the question. When do we see that?
When do we see that?
We see that between about 6:30 and 8 o'clock p.m. on September 11th of 3 BC.
Okay. You said September 11th, 3 BC.
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right. I'm just taking that in because there's going to be some people that are going to have mixed emotions about that. But
Oh, people will draw an association, there's no question. But the really amazing fact is not the date, not just that we know the date, which we do, we know when he was born, but the truly amazing fact is not just that we know the date on the Gregorian calendar, is what date was it on the Hebrew calendar?
September 11th, 3 BC, I don't know.
Of course, and so unless this is something you're aware of, you would never think to answer this, to ask this question to begin with, or even know what the answer is. The key is in the moon, because the moon is a teeny weeny little crescent sliver, which means it is a new moon. And in the Hebrew Old Testament religion, they would celebrate, they would have a holiday the beginning of every month when they sighted the new moon. And also 1 month a year, that was not only the new moon for the new month, it was the new moon for the civil new year. So New Year's Day was marked by this sliver of a moon. It's the holiday that we recognize as Rosh Hashanah. It is the Hebrew civil new year, and it is the day they crowned their kings. So what this means is as Jesus was being born in Bethlehem of Judea on September 11th, 3 BC, between 6:30 and 8 o'clock p.m., the equivalent on the Hebrew calendar was Tishri 1, the Feast of Trumpets, which means that 6 miles away in Jerusalem, in the temple, I'm going to choke up. They were blowing shofars announcing the birth of the king.
Let's just take a moment.
Yeah.